Hello! Today we're going to talk about the top 10 commander cards from Strixhaven. Now, my first instinct was to go to EDH Rec and just read those top 10 cards, but I figured, hey, this is my content, so let's talk about the top 10 cards that I think will mature into being the top 10 of Commander. These are not the top 10 EDH Rec cards, but I think these are the cards that will kind of over time mature into that top 10 place. Commander checklist. I just want to talk about this little concept a little bit. It was a concept that was taught to me by Steve Menendian, who was a writer, a Magic writer that wrote a lot about vintage. And what he would do is when every new set came out, he would analyze the set and say, if you're going to play vintage, it's probably a good idea to pick up these cards. Some of them he would rate definitely pick up. Some would be if you play Stacks deck, pick this up, or if you play, this, pick this up. And so this is kind of in that same spirit where it's look, if you play generally a lot of Commander, these 10 cards will probably be cards that eventually you'll come across the need for them. So maybe you should pick them up. I think they're going to be the most impactful for the Commander format out of Strixhaven. And let's get started. So number 10, Blot Out the Sky. I fought with this one and Resculpt at number 10. Resculpt is a blue card instant that you can exile, I believe it's exile, a creature or an artifact, and they get a 4/4. There are already effects that do that, and it was kind of I don't know how it plays in that space. So haven't played that card, so Blot Out the Sky 1. This reminds me of Martial Coup. It's expensive, but in casual Commander, I think that you can hit those that amount of mana, and it does make tokens. So I mean, in a token deck, Aristocrats deck, if you want to make a bunch of 2/1s and then use them as sacrifice fodder, I think it's definitely got some play, and that's why it's in number 10. With these rares and mythic rares, again, I've said this before on videos, but you want to try to get the extended art ones, right? Because if you're going to add this to your collection, assuming that, hey, I'm going to play this card down the road, those extended art versions or borderless versions are going to appreciate more than the non-extended art versions. So good to pick those in this time period when you're picking stuff up. Good to go for the extended arts. All right, let's keep going. Solve the Equation is number 9. I pulled up some data on EDH Rec here. This reminds me a lot of Merchant Scroll. It's 1 more mana, which is a pretty big deal, but it does get you an instant or a sorcery, where Merchant Scroll is only an instant. And the other thing is that you could get a non-blue card, where Merchant Scroll could only get you a blue card. So I like this card. I think it's cool. At uncommon, pretty easy to get. Super cheap, obviously, but something you probably just want in your collection, because there's going to be, you'll notice because of the Magecraft mechanic, Strixhaven gave a lot to the Spellslinger archetype, and there are a bunch of cards that are really good in Spellslinger in the set, but I didn't necessarily include them in this list because they don't have a general application. They're just really good in Spellslinger. Some Spellslinger cards did make it in because of how powerful they are, and we'll see those as we go on to the list. Another EDH Rec. Now, I didn't do this for every card, but I did want to show this one is one of those cards that I think is some people give it kind of a poor review because, hey, I don't want my land to get Swords to Plowshared, or I don't want my land to get Wrath. But the thing is that you're getting an extra land here. And so Rampant Growth sees so much play in regular Commander. I mean, 33% of decks, that can use Rampant Growth play Rampant Growth. And so this is a Rampant Growth that also gives you a creature. Now, that's sometimes a downside, but sometimes it's an upside too. So I could see you using this to eliminate a player. You untap the land and then attack. You have to give it haste and stuff like that. But I mean, there's things you can do to jump through hoops to make this fatal, I guess is the word. Fatal, lethal is the word I'm looking for. So fatal. Maybe I'll start using fatal instead of lethal. That's funny. All right, so I think this is a good number 8. Another uncommon, easy to pick up, and one of those cards that you should take out of your draft droppings and just keep copies of it, because I think eventually people will warm up to this card and it'll see more play in different decks. All right, number 7, another Magecraft card, but really super powerful. Archmage Emeritus. Every time you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. Drawing a card is very powerful, and this is a good example of a card that's just alone, right? If you just play this and then cast the instant or sorcery after it, it's already replaced itself. And it doesn't have to be in a spell slinger deck to get that kind of value. So it's also a wizard, which it can be in wizard, tribal, this kind of thing. So I like this card. Again, there's an extended art. There's also an alternate printing that came in the bundles. So if you buy a bundle, you can get it in the bundles as well. So, all right, number 6, one of these cards. So like Vanishing Verse or Fracture. I have not played with either of these cards, so I don't know which one, but I know when I was evaluating the cards of the set that Najeela likes these like 1 and 2 mana removal spells, and I only have so many slots in my Najeela deck for removal spells, so like these kind of things are like, this is kind of like Assassin's Trophy was so good for Najeela because it gives you a way to answer so many a spectrum of things. And I was using D-Spark for a while, and I could definitely see this taking the spot of D-Spark. It just depends on like what I feel like is most important, right? If I want to be in the creatures, I'm probably with the Vanishing Verse, if I'm looking at blowing up, enchantments or something like that, obviously Fracture. So I think one of those cards, maybe like, okay, if you're building your checklist of commander cards, then I would just pick up both of these because I think they'll see play, and like what you'll find is when you're building a deck that there will be something that's bad for your deck, something, that is kind of like enemy number 1, and one of these two will answer that problem. So, all right, let's keep going. Number 5, Reconstruct History. I like this card a lot. 4 mana. It's in Boros colors, which usually is hard pressed to get card advantage kind of things. But this one is one of those kind of card advantage cards, pretty unique to the color pair, and it gets you an artifact, an enchantment, an instant, a sorcery, and a planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand, right? So like that's a lot. That's a lot of cards. So even like getting like 2 of those or 3 of those, I mean, that's it's a pretty sizable draw spell in a sense. 4 mana is a lot, but again, in the color pair, it's kind of hard to come by that kind of what would you call it? That kind of card. I don't want to call it advantage. It's not card advantage, but that kind of raw card draw. I guess I would call it draw maybe in some sense. So I like Reconstruct History, another uncommon. So a lot of these cards are easy to pick up. It's just the matter of like having the forethought to just take it out of your bulk, or take it out of your draft stuff, or out of a pack that you open, and just putting it aside essentially. Belladros Witherbloom. Okay, so there was a bunch of Elder Dragons in this set, and Belladros was I think the best of all of them. It can be in token decks. It has that untap ability, which, can probably be abused in some way. I think this is the best of them, and one of the kind of cards that could just fit in any green-black deck or any deck with that kind of pairing. So I like Belladros Witherbloom. It has a really sweet borderless treatment. Strixhaven Stadium. A card that people have not really warmed up to it yet, but it is a mana. I love mana rocks that do something else, and there's a whole host of them. But this one says win the game on it, right? Essentially, I mean, it says loses the game, right? Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, put a point counter on Strixhaven Stadium. Then, if it has 10 or more point counters on it, remove them all, and that player loses the game. So, it's just free value because it's a mana rock that you can use to tap for mana. But if you have a lot of creatures in your deck, or if you just happen to be getting points and nobody's hitting you, and there's ways to, make it so that you don't get hit, right? It's because whenever you get hit, you have to remove a point counter. But if you have something like Glacial Chasm, right, then like, Strixhaven Stadium and Glacial Chasm, I mean, the thing is though, with Glacial Chasm, you cannot attack, so you have to do the whole like sacrifice it and then bring it back with what do you call it? Any of the Crucible Worlds effects, you know, anything that brings the land back. But it's stuff like that you can jump through hoops to manipulate Strixhaven Stadium, and just on its face as a 3-mana rock that has that extra ability. I like it, and it can go in any deck, so that's why I rate it so highly. All right, Storm Kiln Artist. This reminds me of like Blood Artist for certain kinds of decks. There's like these Blood Artist effects that you really need when you start building these engine style decks, you know, aristocrat decks, stuff like that. And this reminds me of that style of card where when you're building Spellslinger decks or certain decks that combo in a certain way, generating that extra treasure token like is going to be a big deal. So we're going to see more and more of this Storm Kiln Artist in different builds as people start to utilize it and figure out the best way to abuse it. And again, this is also an uncommon, so it's super easy to get, something that I think, you know, even though I rate it highly, it's like, yeah, you should pick that up. All right, number one right here, Wandering Archaic. I wonder if you guessed what the number one card was. Wandering Archaic is it's a colorless card, and really the front side is the big payoff, right? It's a 4/4 for 5 mana, comes down pretty early in the game, quote unquote, especially in like casual settings of Commander. You know, you play Soul Ring, you play this, you know, turn 3, you know, you can play this, right? And it just copies instants or sorceries, which is amazing. So like, you know, it's not as amazing as you think it would be at first, but it is really good. And because it's colorless, can go in any deck, I expect it to be one of the like cards. Like, that's why I have it at number one. It's going to be one of the Commander cards of the set. And, you know, we're going to see it a lot in the coming years. It also has a backside, Explore the Vastlands, which is just extra value. Each player look at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land and or instant or sorcery from among them, and puts the card that they revealed this way into their hand and the rest on the bottom of their library in any order or random order. Each player gains 3 life. Anyways, the backside is like, it's a nice to have, but really the front side is what's going to make this card not ambiguous, but ubiquitous. Is it ubiquitous? Ubiquitous in Commander. I hope I got that word right. You guys could correct me in the comments. So that's it. My top 10 Strixhaven Commander cards. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you in just a bit. Bye-bye.